Hey there, I'm Debra and Clement, and today I want to talk about the cycle of Neptune transiting retrograde. Now, on June 22nd, Neptune stationed retrograde, 20 degrees of Pisces, and is going to continue to backpedal through the sign of the fishes until it turns direct at 18 degrees of Pisces on November 28th of this year, 2020. So, what is the purpose of this cycle? Well, it's a retrograde cycle, and what do we say? Well, it's best used introspectively. We look within, and that is true, right? We look within and we look within for answers. But to what question? Well, when Neptune is transiting retrograde, the question is this: what have you been kidding yourself about? Okay? Because think about Neptune, and let me just say this first. Neptune stays in a sign for about 14 years. So that means all of us have been experiencing Neptune in Pisces, transiting direct and retrograde in a particular house in our horoscope several times. But the point is, Neptunian energy is subtle. Neptune rules the 12th house, the house of the subconscious. So we are not aware of things. And if we are not really aware of the purpose of the cycle, I mean, it's true of any cycle, but especially I'm going to say for Neptune, because it doesn't give up its secrets easily, that's for sure. Well, it can just sort of pass us by, and we really don't make much progress. So, on that note, let's talk about Neptune. On a personal level, the house that Neptune is transiting in your chart, and by this I mean transiting direct, during that time, those are the life areas where you are likely to experience some degree of confusion, perhaps deception, and something may dissolve or erode, because that's a principle of Neptune. It actually dissolves what it touches. But you're also very likely to experience enlightenment in those areas, inspiration, maybe some divine downloads, quite frankly. And the reason, though, about Neptune and what makes it a little difficult, well, a few things. It's vague. That's one of the reasons it's difficult to deal with. But Neptune is like the siren's song. Okay, it's seductive. It can feel really good. Neptune rules anesthesia. I mean, seriously, like, yeah, you're cutting my stomach open. It's okay. I don't know. I'm completely out of it. Or even if I'm awake, I'm not feeling anything, right? It's like, yeah, I'm not feeling any pain. Addictions. And so that's the point, is that that energy, it's seductive. It's got this, it feels so good. Even though it's bad for me, even though I shouldn't, that sugar is bad for me, that addiction is bad for me. God, that relationship is bad for me. But it feels good. It makes me feel good. And that's the energy. And so when you're talking about Neptune, it's easy to forget to take a breath before you dive into the water. Okay, and let's face it, we all know what happens when you run out of air, right? We drown. So when Neptune, though, goes retrograde, well, that's signaling a time, and that is a time when we are being very gently guided, it's subtle, to distinguish what's real, what's not, what is genuine, okay? What's genuine, what's fraudulent. We are being guided to look and see where we have also been deceiving ourselves, where we've turned a blind eye, a deaf ear, and, all those other sayings. But the point about it is, when it's going through the retrograde cycle, sometimes we see it right away, and it's kind of like, oh my God, it's been there all the time. How did I not notice it? Sometimes it takes a little bit of work. Okay, so, and that's why we have several cycles of this energy. Besides, listen, every house rules more than one area, right? So it gives us the opportunity. All right, so we are examining whatever the life areas are, and we may see something and say, oh my God, this is where I've been deceiving myself. Or, okay, well, once you do, or once we do, we have a choice at that point, right? We either have to face it, acknowledge it, and we got to own responsibility for it. Whether it was a mistake, it was bad judgment, it's a character flaw. Sometimes we may realize, oh my God, it's a trait that I have. I don't know, I'm a phony, all right? Or some misguided belief or bad decisions. So we can either own it, or quite frankly, we can just continue to deny it, right? Just continue to deny it, refuse to accept it. So if we accept it and we choose clarity, Well, listen, if we choose the clarity, we have to embrace our flaws, our self-delusions, again, our misplaced faith. And we have to own it. And along with owning that, we have to own the feelings that go along with it. The feelings of regret, embarrassment, shame, inadequacy, and guilt, right? Very Neptunian. And you have to own it all, because until you own it, you can't release it. Okay? And if we don't release it, what does it continue to do? It haunts us, right? It diminishes us. Now, so that's what we need to do. But on the other hand, it's always a choice. We have free will. So we could just actually continue to say, I'm not going to deal with it right now. Another day. And if we do, because remember, Neptune, it's intoxicating. It's intoxicating. We will continue, okay? If we choose to ignore it and just go into the feel-good energy, we'll continue to be shielded actually by Neptunian fog, by the haze. But even Neptunian illusions, okay, they can't last forever. Sooner or later, Saturn, Uranus, or Pluto is going to come along and destroy that fantasy. And if that happens and we haven't taken any action, well, that is the rude awakening, and that is when we realize, God, we think we've been, have all the time in the world. We don't. We think we've been, having a nice, little wandering. No, we really are lost, okay? So even though I'm going to be frank here, it's not the easiest cycle even when we're looking in, but the energy, it really does offer a clear path. It takes focus to find it. Takes a little courage sometimes too, quite honestly. We don't always want to face things, but it takes us, we have to be conscious of it, and we need to be conscientious of the energy. Because again, Neptune rules the 12th house. It's the house of secrets. It doesn't give them up easily. It shrouds them, right? Now, what does it also ask us to do? The biggest thing, and I mentioned earlier that Neptune is ego denying. Well, it's asking us to look beyond our own ego. And that's where we have to start. Before you're going to really get a glimpse of where you've been deceiving yourself, we have to all get past our own egos. Now, we are all making a choice of some sort, right? While Neptune is retrograde, and that is, are we going to embrace it, or are we going to deny it, right? Whatever it is that we find. And that's going to determine what happens when Neptune goes direct. Because if we've embraced it and we can release it and let it go, right? When Neptune goes direct, we can get more into the higher visionary side of Neptune, and certainly, when I say a healthier life, right? Whatever it might be. Or otherwise we continue on the same path, which, like I say, at some point in time, we're gonna get that rude awakening. We're just gonna get the rude awakening. And it may come sometimes I won't say it may, because usually if we've ignored it long enough, it does come in the form of some type of a crisis. Don't mean that it's life or death, but it's upsetting. And I mentioned Saturn, and I mentioned Uranus, and I mentioned Pluto. And on that note, I also want to mention eclipses, because eclipses, right, associated with blind sides, yeah, they can be quite illuminating as well. So let's talk about the signs and the rising signs and where you might have been kidding yourself. So if you are born under Aries or with Aries rising, well, Neptune is transiting retrograde in your 12th house, all right? So 12th house is isolation. How have you been handling isolation? Have you been kidding yourself that you like being alone? Have you been kidding yourself that, you don't have any enemies, everybody loves you, no one would ever gossip about you? What else could you be kidding yourself about in the 12th house? Dependency issues. Any type of dependency issue. Could be an addiction. Okay, it doesn't have to be a full-blown addiction. Could even be more of a codependency issue. And just in general, do you kid yourself that you feel like, I face everything head on? Do you? And do you have faith? 12th house is a house of faith. Really, do you? Do you trust? There's a certain amount of trust you need with the 12th house. And also the 12th house is just a house of victims, right? It's self-sacrificing. Are you as self-sacrificing as you make yourself out to be? And I'm not saying, of course, that everyone should be, totally self-sacrificing, because we turn ourselves into victims then, all right? But again, and on that note, is it poor me? Have you been kidding yourself that you've got this, you put out like, I'm independent, I take care of myself, I make my own luck, I make my own fortune, but in your own mind, it's like, oh, poor me, pity me, all right? These are just some questions I'm just going to say that you might be asking yourself. Now, other 12th house areas, of course, spirituality in general, anything to do with intuitive work, past lives, I want to go there for a moment. If Neptune is transiting retrograde in your 12th house, it is an excellent time for any kind of work or exercise that's connected to past lives, because the truth is there may be something that the root of the problem may not be in this lifetime. It could be something carried over from the past lifetime. And again, have you been kidding yourself that maybe, hey, that's not possible? So just a few things to ask yourself. Now, if you are born under Taurus or with Taurus rising, Neptune is transiting retrograde in your 11th house. Now, so have you been kidding yourself? Have you been kidding yourself about your relationships, your friendships? And by that I mean, when I say, are you really that popular? And I don't mean with close friends. Are you that popular, or do people tend to call you or use you? Because the truth is, it's not that they don't like you. They may like you, but it's really more that they can count on you, okay? Because they know that you are reliable. Have you been kidding yourself about how you feel about fitting in, whether it's important to you or not? All right. Same thing. 11th house is the house of humanitarian causes and social justice, right? Has there been something, maybe you've been involved in something, some type of a charity or something for years, and the truth of the matter is you just don't feel it anymore. Is there something maybe you're shaking your head about, quite frankly? Again, it's just time to ask those questions. And in terms of goals, 11th house, hopes, wishes, right, are goals. Have you been kidding yourself about your goals, okay? And kidding yourself in the sense that, and it can go either way, where you just feel like, oh, I'm getting closer every day, I'm going to get to it, and you're doing nothing. Or have you been kidding yourself about a goal in that you've been feeling like, oh, I'll never reach it? And maybe that's just a complete illusion, because maybe you've been listening, quite frankly, to people that you shouldn't be listening to. Okay. And last but not least, I'm going to say, have you been kidding yourself about, I'm going to say, the greater good in this sense? Have you been kidding yourself about either being let down? I'm just going to say being let down or misled. And here I am going to say friends, but I'm just also going to say colleagues. And as far as goals and hopes, are you kidding yourself that, hey, whatever the goal is, when I get whatever, when I become whatever, life is going to be perfect? Those are some questions you can ask. Now, if you are born under Gemini or with Gemini rising, well, Neptune is transiting retrograde in your 10th house, right? Destiny, career. So, where are you kidding yourself? Well, what are you kidding yourself about? Do you know where you're going? Do you have a career path? Do you have enough ambition, quite frankly? Or have you been kidding yourself that it's like you talk the good game, like, yeah, I've got all this ambition, but you don't follow through? Okay, is it realistic? Are your goals realistic? If you're working, 10th house rules the boss. Okay, and so have you been kidding yourself in some way about your relationship to superiors? Are you thinking, yeah, they don't notice I leave early, or whatever the case may be? It's just something to consider. All right. It's a parental house. 10th house is a parental house. So let me go there. When you're talking about a parent for a moment, when I say when you're kidding yourself about, could it be something connected to a parent? And it could be their health, their faculties. I'm not saying that they're going downhill, but have you been kidding yourself about something connected to a parent? Sometimes it is connected to a parent's health and well-being. And what about, well, Neptune in the 10th house? Retirement. Have you been kidding yourself about that, thinking, oh, you're going to retire in a few years? And the truth of the matter is, maybe you wouldn't be happy, or maybe, quite frankly, you just could not, you couldn't afford to if you wanted to. Now, I mentioned that Neptune is ego denying. So let me be clear about this. If you are not happy in your field, Neptune is, while it's retrograde, it is going to show you where you are not happy. It's going to bring up that, let's say, disenchantment. All right, it's going to bring those issues up for you, and you've got to face them, okay, really, at this time, because there can be a setback at this time in terms of the ego. If you've been working at something and you're working at it because you want the money, it's the glory, and the money, it's not that you're going to do terribly, but during this time, while Neptune is retrograde, all right, it is likely to, this is the time to really look for that and deal with it and accept it and consider making changes. Because I will say this, when Neptune is going, when it goes direct in the 10th house, if you are in an occupation and you're not in it for the right reasons, okay, you're not feeling it, you're just doing it for ego-driven reasons, Neptune is not going to be kind. Okay, it will be, you will experience confusion, you will experience some deceptions. It's the way it goes. Okay, now Cancer is next, right? Yeah, Cancer. So if you were born under the sign of Cancer or with Cancer rising, well, Neptune's transiting retrograde in your 9th house. Now, it's a house of knowledge, right? So let's start with the knowledge and education. All right. Have you been kidding yourself? I don't want to say about how smart you are, but have you been kidding yourself? Okay. About chasing. Have you always been chasing knowledge? I need another, when I get that other degree, when I get this other certification, everything will be right. So are you kidding yourself in some way about education that you need? On the other side, are you kidding yourself and saying, I don't need it. I don't need that master's, or I don't need that course, or I can just teach myself. Okay. Have you, spiritually speaking, because 9th house is religion, have you been kidding yourself some way about spirituality? And in that sense, it could just be, have you been following, I don't know, have you been involved in the wrong group, the wrong church, following the wrong teacher? Maybe it's not really rings true to you. Okay. And 9th house is grandchildren. I want to mention this, grandchildren and in-laws as well. So I do want to say, are you kidding yourself? I hate to say about your grandchildren or your in-laws, but in a simple thing that, your grandchildren do no wrong, or that your in-laws are really good people and maybe they're not. Or have you been kidding yourself that, something, you've been looking at them and thinking, God, they're selfish or whatever. And the truth is, hey, it's not them. It could possibly be you. Okay, 9th house, philanthropy. Have you been kidding yourself that, you think I'm a generous person, I give and I help, but really, when is the last time maybe you donated to a cause or helped someone? So those are some questions for you, Cancer and Cancer rising. Leo, it's your turn. If you're born under Leo or with Leo rising, Neptune is transiting retrograde in your 8th house. So have you been kidding yourself about how much support, how much backing you really have from other people, okay, who really has your back? Have you been kidding yourself when it comes to shared or joint resources, all right? So if you share money with a partner, with a spouse, could even be a child or a parent for that matter, okay? Is there something that you have been kidding yourself or oblivious about? I'm going to use that word actually for this as well. And 8th house. 8th house is a house of trust, right? It's a house of trust. Have you been kidding yourself about who you can trust? Intimate relationships. Neptune can dissolve what it touches. I said that's one of the principles. Have you been kidding yourself that your intimate relationship, you know what? It's not intimate anymore, or rather, it's not physical anymore. It's platonic. Have you been kidding yourself that that doesn't make a difference? Maybe you need to think about that. Now, the 8th house is also about power. So when it comes to, I'm going to say, sharing power, things of that, giving in, accommodating, have you been kidding yourself some way about the balance of power? Okay. Now, I just want to think Yeah, I want to go to the psychic for a moment. So Neptune retrograding in the eighth house. Have you, I know I'm going to the psychic, but I'm going to use the word boundaries for this, because if there is intuitive ability, have you been, when I say have you been kidding yourself about intuitive ability, it could be that you've been denying it. Maybe you're afraid of it and you've got to acknowledge that. But the other point is, there something, if you're having any issues with it, or you can't sort of control it, that's the way I'm going to put it, or really focus on it. Have you been kidding yourself that there's something out of balance? And it could be boundary issues. You know, we have boundary issues, right, in the physical world with people. We have boundary issues, quite frankly, with spirit. And that is why, you know, you'll hear certain mediums, certain people say, oh, the spirits are always around me. They're always talking to me. They're always bothering me. They're always whatever. It's a boundary problem. It's a boundary issue. I do not have spirits bothering me. I don't. Do they come forward sometimes, sort of out of the blue, and show up? Or I'm doing a reading, I'm doing a psychic reading, and spirit comes through? Yeah, it happens. But I'm not, you know, besieged by them. And so if you're having any issues with, let's say, sleeping or dreams or anything like that, and you're kidding yourself, well, I'm just open, I'm psychic. Yeah, you are, but that's not, don't kid yourself and think, oh, that just means I am so, I would say, like, I'm so gifted, I'm so talented. Yeah, you probably are. You are open, but you need to control it, okay? You need to get into the boundaries. So just we'll mention that. Now, Virgo. So if you're born under Virgo or with Virgo rising, Neptune's transiting retrograde in your seventh house. Relationships. Okay, easy one. Okay. How are you kidding yourself when it comes to relationships? And that means friends as well as business partners, as well as romantic partners. You know, again, who can you really trust? And are you attracting those higher souls, or are you attracting the addicted? There's, you know, what I say, the addicted, the afflicted, and the restricted. Are you a magnet for those people? Okay, you really have to look at your relationships at this time. Especially, like I said, if there's been confusion, this is a time you look within. You know, are you kidding yourself that maybe you know what? Maybe you do have impossible standards. Are you always nitpicking? Are you always finding something wrong with everyone and dismissing that about them? Okay. And listen, seventh house relationships go both ways. Are you kidding yourself that you're there for people as much as you say you are? Now, I'll be honest, you're a Virgo, you probably do show up, but it is still something to look at. Now, savior complex, right? Savior complex. Neptune transiting retrograde in the seventh house, it is a question to ask. Are you at your best in your relationships when you are fixing people, when you are helping people? And it's not bad to help people, right? Or to, you know, but is there something there going on? You need to look at that, okay? And business partners, again, I'm just going to say anything to do with business partners. Also, people that you might consult with. Ask yourself the question: where are you kidding yourself? Are you really? Is it really an equal partnership, or, you know, fairly equal in your relationships, or quite frankly, are they running the show? Okay, and you know they're driving and you're the passenger. If you are born under Libra or with Libra rising, Neptune is transiting retrograde in your sixth house. Okay, so are you deluding yourself? What are you kidding yourself about? Are you deluding yourself in some way about work? Now, when I say work, it could be are you doing the work that, do you really like what you do, right? It's really time to look at it. Does it satisfy your soul? But also, are you kidding yourself maybe about some of your coworkers or people that you hire? If you have people who report or work for you, okay? Again, it's time to look at that and say, you know, can you really rely on them? Are they really there for you? Health and diet. Okay, this is actually a big one, because the question is, when I say, are you kidding yourself, or is there a blind spot about your health? Are you turning a blind eye? Have you had any symptoms, any issues? I'm not saying it's life or death, but anything that you just keep ignoring and say, oh, it'll go away. Oh, it'll go away. Oh, it's getting bigger. It'll go away. It'll go away. Okay, it's time to look at that. Same thing, I will say, diet, health, exercise, you know, you've got to consider that as well. Is it just like, oh, I'm just tired because I've got stress today? Or have you been kidding yourself? It's because, quite frankly, you know, you eat junk all the time. All right. And I get that because been there, done that a long time ago. But the point is, that's why I say, are we kidding ourselves that we can keep going along on the routine that we have? If you're burning the candle at both ends in your daily routine, are you kidding yourself, Libra and Libra rising, that you're just going to, it's, that you're never going to run out of steam, right? It's time to look at these things. Let me see. Oh, and just this, while Neptune's retrograde in the sixth house in terms of health, it is a time to consider, is there some type of an emotional or psychological basis for anything that could be bothering you physically, right? So just want to mention that. And also, no, that's it. That's good. Scorpio, we're on to Scorpio. So Scorpio or Scorpio rising, Neptune is transiting retrograde in your fifth house. Okay, so have you been kidding yourself about romance, right? Passion. And similar, I'm just going to say to eighth house, because the fifth house is a very sexual house. And so have you been kidding yourself that your romance is still romantic, or has it become, quite frankly, a bit platonic? Has the passion fizzled and you just keep telling yourself, no, it's there, no, it's there? Do you need to do something about it? Romance, when I say, what are you kidding yourself about? Are you kidding yourself in the sense that you're never going to find love? Everyone can find love but you. You're never going to have romance, or every person that you meet is the one. Okay. Yeah. Those are some things to consider while Neptune is retrograde in the fifth house. Children, fifth house, Neptune retrograde. Look, in terms of what you're kidding yourself about, I will say this for some of you. Be honest, maybe time to be honest and say, I'm kidding myself that I really love children. They're nice. I love children as long as they're somebody else's children. Okay. And if you have children, quite frankly, again, do you see them clearly? Have you been kidding yourself that it's always a teacher, it's not your child? Or the other way around, that you've been too hard on your children. It is always the child and not the teacher. What area, again, right? Have you maybe been deceiving yourself in that sense? And also, creativity, right? Fifth house, creative self-expression. So it's about distinguishing ourselves too. Fifth house, right? We want to be recognized. We want to be distinguished. And I will say, with Neptune retrograde, on the negative side, we should ask, do we believe our own fiction? All right. Do we do things to just deceptive things to bolster our sense of, I'm going to say, self-worth? On the other hand, do you not give yourself enough credit? Okay, where are you deceiving yourself? Is it that, you're not that talented, you're not that good, and it's just not true. You really are. Okay. Sagittarius, Sagittarius is, give me a second. Okay, Sagittarius and Sagittarius rising, Neptune is transiting retrograde in your fourth house. So when I say, where have you been kidding yourself, right, about your home and your family? Let's start with home and just say, have you been kidding yourself in the sense that, are you really happy, really satisfied, not just where you live, but quite frankly, who lives with you? And that can be, are you happy, kidding yourself, I love living alone, I don't need people. Or, oh, I love that all my kids came home and are living, back in the nest again. It is time. Now, when Neptune is retrograde in the fourth house is associated with things with the past. It can bring up unresolved issues from the past. All right. So in that sense, and this could be family related, but it could be anything at all. Have you been kidding yourself that you're really over something? You're done with it. You got over it. And the truth is, you haven't. You've been really, it just keeps every time you feel it, it just sort of gets pushed aside or covered up. Okay. And family. Okay, but family here, I want to go to parents. Again, is a parental house. So it is a time to consider, have you been kidding yourself or denying something in connection to a parent? It could be your relationship with them, could be something physical, and it doesn't have to be anything serious. It could just be, you sort of kid yourself that it's like, we don't want to recognize, gee, mom is getting older or dad is getting older. Oh my God, they've slowed down. They can't do what they used to do. And it might be time that you need to recognize it. Why? Not to make you feel bad, but so that you could help them, not just, and help them feel better. Do something that will maybe enable them and, just make them be a little bit more independent or feel a little bit more youthful or something. But just something to consider for that as well. And in terms of also belonging, because fourth house to me is very much about the tribe, and that very much, let's face it, not always our blood relations. Have you been kidding yourself about, hey, I love my tribe, I have a tribe, I don't want a tribe, whatever it may be. But it is about, there is a little bit of that. It's not relationships like siblings, necessarily siblings, partners, and friends, but it's a different relationship. It is more on that soul level, okay? And that's why I'm going to say it's a tribe. It's a people that really get you. And so that's something, even maybe you kid yourself that you think it's really not that important. I'm fine. I'm fine. So again, that is something, some questions to ask yourself. And if you are born under Capricorn or with Capricorn rising, Neptune is transiting retrograde in your third house. So I'm going to say this. It's going to sound a little odd when I say, have you been kidding yourself about how you express yourself to others? And by that I mean how well you express yourself to others, okay? As well as how you think or how you process information. I mean, or how decisive you are, quite frankly. Okay, think about, give that some thought. Now, with relationships, and that's neighbors and that's siblings, and of course, it's is there something going on? Have you been kidding yourself about a relationship? It's you're not as close as you wish you were, or they don't have your back as much. Or on the other side, maybe you are the one who is not as supportive as you should be. Okay, third house rules the mind. It's an intellectual house. So self-doubt, self-doubt with Neptune going direct in the third. So again, have you been kidding yourself about your intellectual abilities? Has there been a lack of confidence, quite frankly? Okay. Do you deny, have you been kidding yourself about intuition? And again, it could go either way, that you think you're more intuitive than you are, but more than likely that you really don't believe it, that you have some doubts about it. Okay. I want to just say this, while Neptune is retrograde, great time for psychic development, especially in the third house. Also inspired writing. So I just want to mention that to you as well. And when it comes to the third house, also in terms of, when I say, what are you kidding about? Your mood. Okay, I know it's an intellectual house, but Neptune is there. And our mood is connected to what we think, our thoughts, right? Are they positive? Are they negative? Have you been kidding yourself that, I don't know, maybe you think you're the most optimistic person and, and most of the time maybe you are, but is that completely true? And deep down, do you believe the glass is half full? Okay, or do you believe a lot of times, it's half empty? So consider that. Aquarius. If you are born under Aquarius or with Aquarius rising, Neptune's transiting retrograde in your second house. Okay, have you been kidding yourself about your finances? What's going on with your money? When you lift the veil, is there anything saved? Okay, have you been undermining yourself? Are you, when I say, where are you kidding yourself? Are you underpaid for your worth? Are you charging too less? Are you charging too little? Are you charging too little? Do you kid yourself in the sense, do you fantasize about all the things, how wonderful life will be and all the things that you'll be able to do when you have money? Basically, are you wasting time? Have you been kidding yourself thinking, oh, again, I've got all this time, and it's just sort of passing you by a little bit, quite frankly. Okay, because maybe you're not willing, quite frankly, to start a little smaller. Because if so, again, Neptune is retrograde. It's time to examine that, to embrace that type of thinking, right? Because you certainly want to change it. Now, the second house also with the values and the priorities, okay? And that takes in a lot, but I will say, have you been kidding yourself or deceiving yourself that when it comes to your priorities, that they're all perfectly in order? Is there something or someone that maybe needed more priority? And listen, that someone might be yourself, quite frankly, and you think I'm giving them enough, but you're not. So that's something else to consider. And of course, Pisces, Well, those of you who are born under Pisces or with Pisces rising, okay, Neptune's transiting retrograde in your first house. Now, that's the house of the self, right? It's also an action-oriented house. It's the house, it's physical appearance. It's the impression, the first impression. And so I am going to say to you, have you been kidding yourself about how other people perceive you? Okay? And I'm not suggesting that you have to worry about what everybody thinks, but there are times when we don't see what other people see, and sometimes it doesn't work that well for us, especially if we have to, I don't know, impress a certain person. Maybe it's for a job or something. But I am just going to say to you, really, to consider that. Have you been kidding yourself about how other people perceive you? And also, if or how you perceive yourself. That's why I say there could be something out of sync there. I think that's the way it's going to go. What you see in terms of your image and your approach to life. So here's the thing. Have you been kidding yourself in some way about your approach to life? And by that I mean, are you the go-getter, or have you been the go-getter? Okay, during this period that you've, been telling everybody that you are, or that in your own mind that you believe you are, or quite frankly, have you been sitting on the bench, waiting for that someday, or for those right conditions, line everything up before you are ready, to strike out or to initiate something? Now, first house, very often when our first house is activated, relationships as well. So I am just going to say here, some of you may be asking yourselves at this time, are you as self-sufficient, okay, as you think you are? Are you as much of a victim as you think you are? Probably the answer to that is no. I mean, are you looking for a savior when you talk about partners? So there is a question to ask about, are you undermining yourself in some way? Because if you are, you need to look at it squarely in the face, so to speak. And again, you want to understand why, so that you can change it and move forward and change that life to look like whatever the ideal life looks like to you, right? Because Neptune is the ideal. That's where you want to be headed. But first we have to look within and say, okay, where have I been kidding myself? So that wraps it up. If you liked it, if you enjoyed it, please, click the like, give the thumbs up, post a nice comment. By all means, subscribe and share it. Please share it with other like-minded people that you think, who you think might enjoy it. I'd appreciate it. And I will be back soon with some videos on other topics, all right, on other astrology topics. All right, until next time, stay well. Bye-bye.